3CF Moreno Valley.
Hey Malcolm, how are you?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
Doing fantastic. I'm so glad to have you here. So first off, you want to give us a brief overview of who you are and basically where you come from.
All right. So I was born in South Carolina.
Okay.
Charleston, South Carolina. My father was in the military, and so 6 months after I was born, I was in Okinawa, Japan, and I've been all over the world. And the last place I ended up in was Oceanside, California. And from Oceanside, California, I, graduated high school and then went off to college down in Anaheim, moved back to where my parents were living at in the city of Hemet.
Okay.
Started my educational career at Mount San Jacinto, Cal Baptist, and then got a master's degree at Argosy University. Mm-hmm. And then I ran for city council in the city of Hemet. And now I'm a council member that serves as the mayor pro tem.
Got it. Okay, that's cool. So what made you decide to go that route into politics?
Just to be honest, I think it was a drop in my spirit from God, a very spiritual man. And so I'm telling you, from January to, you have to pull there's a frame when you have to pull your papers. And from January to, I want to say, June, I wasn't thinking about politics at all. And then all of a sudden, just in my spirit, it was like, you should run. And it was weird how everything fell into place because the city of Hemet is in districts. And so you can't just run at any time you want. And it just so happened that my district was up. I didn't even know we were in districts. My district was up. I ran. I got on city. I won. Raised $2,800. The people can't even believe it. They're like, I broke every rule of the science when it comes to running. Mm-hmm. And I just chalked that up to the Spirit of God leading me the whole time.
That's amazing. Wow, that's so cool. So, okay, so you're part of Hemet. Is Hemet and San Jacinto the same thing, or is that two separate?
They're two separate cities.
There's two separate. Okay.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about what you do aside from even you being a part of the politics side.
So I do run a private practice called New Hope Christian Counseling. It's not my business, but it's kind of like how barber shops they rent the chair from the owner. It's something like that.
Okay.
It's set up. And so New Hope Christian Counseling, it's located it's 464 South Palm Avenue in the city of Hemet. And I work with children. The lowest age I have is 5 right now, but the lowest I'll go to is 4.
Okay.
All the way up to 75.
And what do you help them with?
If they're struggling mentally, so anxiety, depression, PTSD. To break down anxiety, it's almost like panic attacks, and people are afraid to go out of their house. So you got social disorders.
Right.
All of these disorders I help people with. We are contracted with the County of Riverside, so we see a lot of DPSS children, and so that means I see a lot of foster children as well.
So I'm curious because you mentioned, people's, mental state and everything. So do you feel like you got more clients after COVID happened, or, was there any kind of change at all there?
Absolutely. COVID. So we were kind of steady, and then COVID it's hard to put it in like 3 sentences what happened after COVID, but isolation is not a good thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's just like you're 4 people, but isolation is not good for the humans. And if you find yourself isolated, it just takes you down this depression spiral. And then you find out that if you're not careful, you'll build a habit out of it, and you won't even know that you're in it until it's too late.
What do you mean?
What I mean by too late is you're so far in it that's the point where you need help, but you're so far in it because isolation leads to I don't want to tell somebody I need help. But it's deeper than I don't want to tell somebody I need help. It's you're moving in this realm where you start thinking like you're a burden because you can't get out of it. And then because you think you're a burden, it's like I'll just step back from people because the people are getting frustrated with you saying that you're not creative enough. that, you know, we're all isolated in the house. We should have been creative enough, right? The shoulds and the musts. We should have
Right.
been creative enough to be able to handle being isolated like that. But the humans aren't designed to be isolated. We're
Right.
very
Social
social.
beings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, even within that industry, is there like a particular focus that you have as far as building that business?
So my particular focus would be, I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. So according to cognitive behavioral therapy, it's if you change the way a person thinks, they'll change the way they feel, and then ultimately they'll change how they behave. So you think, you feel, you behave.
Right.
And my thing over the years it's been about, I want to say 6 years since I've been doing this.
Okay.
And as an associate marriage and family therapist, it's like all I'm doing is teaching people how to break the habit of being themselves. So think about it like this. All we are is a set of unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function
Right.
like a computer program.
Right.
And humans think there's something special. But if you think about it, you're just habitual. You're doing all of these habits over and over again. And then you fire and wire these neurons in the same circuits that perpetuate the same behavior.
Right.
So people wonder why I keep getting to the same type of relationships. Why do I keep running into the same type of situations? Or why does these other situations keep triggering me? All the same kind of, it might be a different situation, but it's the
Right.
same root.
Right.
I'm not enough. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares about it. Nobody hears me. And we get these triggers that it's almost like we're addicted to it. So I started to look at emotions as a possibility that you could get addicted to them. Because they're chemicals,
Okay.
right?
Right.
It's a chemicals. We think neurologically within the circuitry of an experience, and then we feel chemically. So when we say like I feel sad, there's these. We say the feeling because we're human and we're
Right.
using language, right?
Right.
And we all decided that it was sad, right? It's just a vibration, right? We're speaking, and it's my larynx is vibrating, the molecules going into your ear canal, right? And so when you're hearing what I'm saying, then you gotta interpret it or filter it through your experiences, the mores that you know, the folkways that you know, and all of your childhood, your background, everything comes in. And so I could say something, and you could, I don't want to say twist it, but you'll hear something that I didn't intend to say to you.
Right.
You'll trigger, and then you'll be back. So then a thought will go across your awareness, and then you start to feel. And then you don't like the feeling. So you might put it back on me to stop the feeling. But instead of going through the feeling fully and then kind of understanding what did what he said or she said, was it able to move me out of powerful disposition to a primal disposition?
You know what's interesting is I studied psychology when I was in college. And one of the things that people love to study is twins. I happen to be a twin, by the way. But,
cool.
and what was interesting is there was a study where you have two twins, male twins. They grew up with an alcoholic father. You have one twin that ended up following in his dad's footsteps and ends up doing the same thing, being an alcoholic, that sort of thing. And then the other twin decided, I don't want to touch it. And so you see the differences in how their lives turned out just because of those choices. And I feel like that kind of relates to what you're talking about in a sense. And I think it maybe has something to do with perception.
Yes.
Or I don't know, because it is an interesting concept how two people in the exact same environment can end up going two different ways. So why is it that one twin decided to see, they grew up seeing that, was like, oh, I'm going to stay away from it. And then the other twin decides, I'm going to go that, I think with the other twin, maybe it wasn't like conscious, like, oh, I'm going to go down that road. But, he fell into it.
I don't think anybody wakes up in the world
Yeah.
and says, I'm going to go down some
Right.
horrible point, right? So think about the big five. Remember the big five? Openness, conscientiousness,
Yes.
extroversion, agreeableness.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And neuroticism. So if a person scores high in neuroticism, they're going to be more sensitive to negative emotions. which is going to drive them over to using I call them third party tools. So alcohol, drugs,
Right.
medication, they're all like these third party tools
Right.
that we manufacture within ourselves
Mm-hmm.
through our neurotransmitters. And then you have openness. So if a person scores high in openness, they're going to be open to new ideas. You could, a Democrat would probably fall under openness. Not fall under openness, but the spectrum is scoring high in openness, and then a conservative would score low in openness. If you score low in something, you have to develop the skills to be fluid across the spectrum, because just because you score low in openness doesn't mean it's not solidified. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So if you score low in or high in neuroticism, and that means you're sensitive to negative emotions, you're going to have to develop the skills to make sure that you can maintain a healthy disposition in your own mind, so that the triggers don't cause you to do anything that's against societal norms.
Right.
You know? So from an evolutionary perspective, someone who scores high in neuroticism, that's a good thing, because those are people who are always looking for what's wrong. You know,
Okay.
we were back in hunting and gathering,
Oh,
you need those people in your community to always, like the meerkats, always checking to see what's happening. You need those people, right?
Right.
But then, since we've been in these four walls, now we don't have to be looking for snakes anymore. We don't have to be looking for the things that we're afraid of. So now the anxiety is stuff that we make up
Right.
in our own mind. You come up with the information, and then you get afraid of it because you embrace it with fear. And someone said, "What do you mean, Malcolm?" You use your imagination to think of the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to go into business, and I start telling myself, "Oh, you'll never make it. You're trying to put something out there, and you're trying to add to the world, and you'll never make it." You remember how your mother used to talk to you? You remember how your friends used to, and how your friends are talking about it right now, like you'll never make it? You listen to those things over
Right.
and over again. You're meditating.
Yeah.
And people tell me all the time they don't have time to meditate, but you're meditating over and over on how much you can't do something,
Right.
how much your mom was in the way, or your dad, your kids.
You know, that's so interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like as I've gotten older, I've realized how much of even childhood has affected who I am today. And I don't think it's conscious. It's not conscious.
It's
Most of
not.
us don't realize.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not a conscious thing. And so now the question that I have for you is, how do you break that? You know? Because a lot of times we do have those bad habits, and a lot of times we're not even aware
We're not.
of the fact that we have these bad habits that need to be, taken care of and changed.
So, evolutionarily speaking, in order to change something, you need this. So I'm 40 years old, right? So if I built this habit for 40 years, I keep doing the same thing, I'm going to need to have enough grace in myself to take the next 40 years to change, just from an evolutionary perspective.
Okay.
With CBT, a person can get that in a year.
What's CBT?
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, okay.
So by changing the way a person thinks, they'll change the way they feel, and then they'll change what they do. And if you change what you do, that'll reinforce your thoughts, right? Because if you're always doing something, if you're avoiding a situation because you don't want to, the topic's too deep, or it's too, an argument's going to ensue. So I should have said sensitive. If you're afraid of that and you don't move into that, you'll just avoid it, and then you'll get this sense of relief, and then you teach your nervous system that that's something you should avoid, and then over and over you keep reinforcing that, so you keep avoiding these topics, or you keep avoiding asking for a raise.
Yeah.
A person who scores high in agreeableness, they're going to have a hard time getting a raise because they're too agreeable.
Right.
So if the first thing a person has to do is become aware of their thought process. So that's the mindfulness that I was talking about.
Right.
That's you can't do nothing else until you start becoming mindful of it's like, think about what you're thinking about,
Right.
Because about 60 to 70,000 thoughts go across our awareness
Yeah.
each day.
That's a lot.
And if you're thinking the same thoughts today that you were the day before,
Yeah.
you're just going to keep creating the same life.
Yeah.
Because the same choice is going to lead to the same experience, and the same experience is going to lead to the same thought process, right? Because it's going to reinforce your thought process, which is going to reinforce the feeling, which is going to reinforce the behavior, which is going to lead to the same choice, which is going to lead to the same experience, and go back.
So basically, to make yourself more aware, in a sense, you kind of need behavioral therapy, right?
You don't. You need to be mindful.
But how do you get there?
Practicing. The same way you practice to get where you are, you got to practice to get out of it. So if I'm telling you that you use your mind, your imagination to think of the worst case scenario, I ask people, use your mind to think of the best case scenario.
Right.
Why don't you spend time in that? Why do we have to spend time thinking of the worst case scenario?
Right.
You know? Because that's what.
I like
okay.
that. Yeah.
So we spend all of this time. Think about it. As a child, you started to tell yourself that you weren't safe, because your parents kept cutting you off or dismissing you. So you learned to shut up, or you learned to go with, to tear yourself up within, right? You can't every time, or maybe your parents weren't really talking negative to you, but they had good, because our parents have good intentions, right?
Of course they do, yeah.
And they were saying something to you like, hey, let me show you a better way. And then you take that as, I can't do anything right. And you build a whole foundation your whole life of, I can't do anything right. So then when it comes time for you to be an entrepreneur or start a business, you're afraid to step out because you were never given that autonomy. You were never given the independence or shown the independence through our parents. And that stuff gets passed down epigenetically,
That's
Do you remember that study from UCLA where they took the little rats and they made them afraid of strawberries?
I don't think I studied that one, but they use rats all the time for different things.
So they conditioned these rats classically to be afraid of strawberries. And you know how they're isolated? So they mated, had children. The next generation after that were afraid of strawberries. What? It was that fear was passed down.
Right.
So imagine you're going through these mind changes all the time, and then when you keep wiring the same circuits over and over again, let's say in a state of fear, you're going to produce because we lose 50,000 cells every 3 seconds. So as you gain new cells, they're born into that. Yeah. They're created in that solution that you've been fostering around in your body. That's why they say, pay attention, be in the moment, practice mindfulness.
I like that.
Because be in the moment. If you're thinking future, you're anxiety. If you're thinking lost, you're going to be depressed. If you look at all of your events in your life and you define it and label it, you're going to feel the way that you labeled it. But if you can turn every situation that you've been around and reframe it into a positive, I may have lost my job, but here's an opportunity for me to go out and get another one.
I like that. We'll talk a little.
KCAA Radio has openings for 1-hour talk shows. If you want to host a radio show, now is the time. Make KCAA your flagship station. Our rates are affordable and our services are second to none. We broadcast to a population of 5 million people. Plus, we stream and podcast on all major online audio and video systems. If you've been thinking about broadcasting a weekly radio program on Real Radio plus the internet, contact our CEO at 281-599-9800. 281-599-9800. You can Skype your show from your home to our Redlands, California studio where our live producers and engineers are ready to work with you personally. A radio program on KCAA is the perfect work from home avocation in these stressful times. Just type kcaaradio.com into your browser to learn more about hosting a show on the best station in the nation, or call our CEO for details, 281-599-9800.
Welcome back to the Journey to Business and Entrepreneurship. My name is Brianna, and we're here with Malcolm. Hi, Malcolm.
Hello.
So we were talking a lot about mindset and mindfulness, which is apparently a huge thing that I never actually really considered myself.
Yeah.
Now, I am curious because like I feel like as entrepreneurs, we have to almost think about things a lot differently than most people just because it's not an easy journey. Number one, it requires a lot of work, a lot of focus, a lot of attention and intention. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about what especially with you speaking on mindfulness, what your opinion is as it pertains to us as entrepreneurs and what we should be focusing on. What kind of mindset is it that you believe we need to have as entrepreneurs to be successful?
I would say try to be as curious as you can. Walk into an environment, every environment that you have, walk into it where you're thinking of it as if you, like, for example, I challenge everybody listening today, when you go back to your family members, try to see them like you first met them. Because what it'll do is it'll stop you from looking at them and the habits that you've written on your brain. So now you won't be thinking when that person starts talking, oh, here we go again. You're more curious, You're more curious to see how could I understand where they're coming from as they're telling me something.
Yeah, you're basically saying to be intentional, right? Because I feel like that's so hard.
So it's a practice, right?
Right.
We say it's hard because it's something like, okay, if you look at the mountains, you know how they have the lines in the mountains because the rain came down and it made these grooves? That's the same thing that happened in our brain neurologically with the connections. So you wire and fire the same connections over and over again, it's gonna be more energy for the brain to make a new connection, which is to stay intentional or to go conscious. Right now, we're used to being unconscious. We're used to just kind of, it's like the leaf that the wind just blows wherever. And then we just hope. We say things like, oh, I hope I get this job, or I hope I start this business. But then we're not doing things each and every day to ensure that we get to that goal. So you have the grand goal.
Right.
And then you make steps each day to make sure that you're moving towards the goal.
Right.
Otherwise, you might as well just hope. But if you're living intentionally, you're going to find out two things: that the business that you're going after, the adventure that you're trying, is going to pan out or not.
Right.
That's beautiful. Oh, I went after this thing, it didn't work, so let me go after this thing. Right. That's the whole part of being. Like when we came from, from an evolutionary perspective, for example, these are for my people who are non-spiritual. When you come, when you're a person who's like looking for an adventure and you go out into the world, right? We needed those people because those people helped the group expand our territory. Right. So if you're an entrepreneur, what you want to do is you want to eradicate fear, because you can't go out into the unknown with fear, because fear it'll cause you delay, and you'll miss out on opportunities where you should have been somewhere, but you weren't there. And so if you let yourself live by fear, then you'll just be struggling with anxiety all the time, and you'll reinforce what you believe about yourself over and over again, and then you won't move, and you just continue to do it, and people will see you like, oh, I saw you start this thing, but you failed again, and they see you fail over and over again, and then you start telling yourself that I keep failing, or I'm embarrassed to say that I failed or whatever, and you just keep going.
Yeah.
But you live intentionally.
Right.
Through mindfulness.
I think sometimes even with failure, like we can get wrapped up in, oh, I failed or whatever, and thinking that it's the end all be all. But realistically, in my personal opinion, if you keep going, eventually you're going to get it. I mean, just like Thomas Edison, I bring him up quite a bit because it's true. Like if he had that mindset and quit after the first time, second time, 10th time, 100th time, he would have never came up with the light bulb. You know what I mean? So I think that's with a lot of different people who are very successful too. Like almost anybody, actually. Kobe Bryant, I love his story. He talks about how bad he was at basketball. Oh, he was the worst basketball player ever. But that's not what we know him as. We don't look at the fact that of where he came from with all the trials, not making a single basketball hoop or shot, during an entire season when he was a kid. Like we don't look at that. We look at his successes. Like someone actually brought up a baseball player. I don't know much about baseball, but they were talking about how he was batting 300.
I don't.
Basically his numbers were really low when you really think about it, but he's like one of the all-time best baseball players out there because we actually see the successes more than we actually see the failures. Yeah. So as long as you keep going, I think that don't quit, keep going, and you'll make it.
Yeah.
I think there's obviously a certain level of determination and commitment and things like that makes a difference too. But yeah.
We need to be able to answer why, though.
Why? Like, why do it?
Why didn't it work? So remember the Netflix special with Michael Jordan?
Okay. I never watched it, but I did hear about it.
They talked about when they lost against the Knicks because the Knicks were way stronger than their team, and they said after they lost that championship, they went back and got into the gym and hit the weights, and because they noticed that those guys were too big. And so then they got big. And so then they put themselves on the same level as them to compete. So if you're an entrepreneur and you fail, you need to be taking notes on what happened.
Right.
So that you don't make the same mistakes over and over again. That's what it means to be intentional, and that's what it means to be conscious.
Right.
The moment you go unconscious is the moment you will start to move it's like the airplane, the pilot puts it on autopilot, but he still has to make adjustments according to the curvature of the earth. So if he doesn't make those adjustments, somebody flying from New York to California might be in Guatemala somewhere if that pilot doesn't make those corrections. So even though they have it on, they still have to pay attention to where they're at. So you pay attention to your own life. Ask yourself every day, who am I as a person? Am I better than I was yesterday? So one of the rules from Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life was...
I like him. I love him.
compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today.
Yeah.
So that's how you stay conscious, and that's how you stay on top of your game. And it's just like being those people in the gym where they're like the bodybuilders, right? They know what they're eating, and they say things like, I'm not eating for it to taste good, I'm eating for substance.
Right.
And I'm not trying to take people's food away, but it's like, just be intentional what you're doing. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to practice mindfulness so that you don't get into a situation where your fears take over your decisions.
Yeah, I think that's huge. It's something that, at least I haven't thought about. I'm only thinking about it mostly because of you bringing it up. But even with the whole, one thing that I've learned, I think the overall thing that I learned from taking psychology when I was in college is that the mind is so much stronger than we realize. And it's so darn powerful.
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot that goes into it as far as what does that look like and what does that mean exactly to say that the mind is so powerful. But realistically, you can make yourself believe whatever the heck you want to believe if you actually put in the work and the effort to train your body and train your mind to think in that way.
Yeah. There were commentary about the Jews that were in Auschwitz.
Okay.
That some of them could tell when their family members were going to die within 3 days based on what they were talking about. And so I know if you're saying something, I know that you believe it. You're not going to say something that you don't believe. And you're not going to be doing things that you don't believe.
Right.
So if you want to know why somebody's doing something, just look at what they get out of it and then infer the motivations from what they get out of it instead of asking like, well, shouldn't they do it like this? And it's like, no, people getting things out of what they're doing, and that's why they keep doing it over and over again, And so the brain being very powerful because it's a habit building. It's very efficient. It'll take what you've learned. That's why you don't have to learn to tie your shoes over and over every day. Imagine that.
Nice. Thankfully, we don't.
So because it makes patterns out of things, it'll also make patterns out of people. And then you get complacent in relationships, whether that's between you and your spouse, or you and your employees, or you and your social circle. If you're not staying conscious and mindful, you won't be in the moment with these people. And if you're not in the moment with these people, you'll miss out on things that they could give you, they could offer you, they could teach you. And it's this whole thing. That's why we're social beings and we play off of each other, you know?
I definitely want to need to be more mindful and practice mindfulness because, again, at the end of the day, I don't recognize the things that I do and say half the time because I don't think about it and how it's affecting my life or the things that I do or the people around me even. I don't know if have you heard of David Goggins?
Yes.
That man is absolutely
He's a
amazing, isn't he?
beast.
He's absolutely amazing. So for those of you who aren't familiar with David Goggins, I would definitely suggest looking him up because he's actually really impressive. He has done, I think, three out of the four Navy SEAL and all these different trainings. And he's a huge believer in the mindset. And he came from being this really overweight gentleman, and he forced himself and pushed himself beyond his limits to the point to where he ended up being able to run on broken ankles.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
They wrote him off.
It's just crazy. I like listening to him because he really talks strongly about the mindset and how powerful it is, or not giving yourself excuses. I think that's one thing as human beings I have done plenty of times is giving myself excuses and actually falling for it.
Yeah.
And I've noticed this with other people because I've been more mindful of that anyways when it comes to excuses and coming up with reasons why I didn't do this or do that. It's nothing more than an excuse. And you have to, and when I hear people talk now, I'm just like, that's just an excuse. And then they'll give another excuse. Real quick though, we're gonna go ahead and go on another quick break, and then we'll be right back with you guys.
Thanks for 1 hour talk shows. If you want to host a radio show, now is the time. Make KCAA your flagship station. Our rates are affordable and our services are second to none. We broadcast to a population of 5 million people. Plus, we stream and podcast on all major online audio and video systems. If you've been thinking about broadcasting a weekly radio program on real radio plus the internet, contact our CEO at 281-599-9800. 281-599-9800. You can Skype your show from your home to our Redlands, California studio where our live producers and engineers are ready to work with you personally. A radio program on KCAA is the perfect work from home avocation in these stressful times. Just type kcaaradio.com into your browser to learn more about hosting a show on the best station in the nation, or call our CEO for details, 281-599-9800.
Welcome back to the Journey to Business and Entrepreneurship. My name is Brianna, and we're here with Malcolm. We were really just talking about mindfulness, of course, and then talking about David Goggins and his mind and things like that. But I also want to see a little bit more about the advice you would give to people, because I feel like I've noticed a lot, especially with a lot of the younger generation and even people who are older too, who are wanting to be entrepreneurs, but I feel like they're, so there's a good thing and a bad thing with the internet, because it's great because it's a lot of information on there, but it's also bad because there's a lot of information on there.
And that information,
right. Exactly. And so you hear from all these different people, you don't know who to pay attention to, who to focus on, or anything like that. So I'm curious to know what kind of advice you would give to someone who is considering being an entrepreneur.
You need to find one that's already active and get under their wing. Volunteer for them, pick their brain. I met Donald Trump in like 2006, I think, somewhere around there. It was at one of those conventions where they were like talking about like buying and selling houses and stuff like that. And one of the things he said was, it's like you get your first property, and then you could pull equity out of it, get a second property, and the money that you use, that you pull out, you could even do something where you get a house and you can pull a loan out of the house, like a HELOC loan, buy some land. On HELOC loans, they're more like construction loans. Okay. So you can you don't have to pay the loan back until the construction's complete.
Oh, does that make sense? Okay, that's nice.
If you set it up like that,
right?
And so he was just sharing things with me, and I started to think, well, at that time I didn't care. Somebody like one, it was like our church leader brought us, and you know, we ended up with this thing, and I'm like, I'm not buying nothing, and I'm too young, and I'm having fun out here. And looking back,
Yeah.
you get yourself around people that are already doing what it is you're trying to do. That's the first thing, because you want to think like them.
Right.
If everybody around you is making 50,000 and you're making 50,000, you're good. That's where you're going to stay at. You need to get around people who are making 100 grand,
Right.
so that you can start to see how they think and mimic their behavior, because they're going to think differently. And then when you get to that 100 grand level, the 6-figure level,
Yeah.
then you find another set of people that are making more than you, so that you can, the
Keep
thing is
elevating.
it's the mindset that keeps people stagnant. So if you're always moving, having a growth mindset they talk about,
Right.
you won't find yourself stagnant. And then you'll be able to watch these people move how they move. You'll see the struggles they go through. So you
Right.
won't, it's like, oh, he has a Maserati, a Lamborghini, and 7 Teslas or something like that.
Right.
He's there. But you don't see the times when he's struggling, and the times when he's upset and crying at night,
Right.
because he wants to spend more time with his kids, or because she wants to spend more time with her children.
Right.
You don't see all that. So if you get with somebody who's already there, you'll see all of that to them, and you'll see they put their pants on just like you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's the advice I always give people, is you need to find somebody that's already doing what you're doing and get with them.
You know, something that I've heard a lot of the time is, you know, you're the sum total of the people that you spend
Yep.
the most time with. And I feel like the biggest challenge I have had in the past is finding people, and I'm sure, I know I'm not the only one, because I've heard it from tons of people, finding people who are actually wanting more for their life and wanting to get to that level. Because, and the reason why I say that, a lot of times people have the good intention of wanting success, of wanting to, wanting more for their life, for their families, stuff like that. But then you actually look at their life and what they're doing on a daily basis, and it's not quite measuring up to what they're saying they want to do. And so it's interesting, because it's quite hard, I feel, to find the right fit as far as people and that are actually wanting to go on that path, which is why I think the I3 Social Club, which is a local social club here in Riverside, that we put together is really good as far as making sure that, you know, we have a basis for entrepreneurs and business people to come together, have some fun. It's a social club, but then also learn about other things, real estate investing or business, helping grow the businesses and stuff like that. So it's actually really cool. But at the same time, I know that at the end of the day, we all go home and there's not always a lot of times we don't always do what we have to do. Let's just be real. We don't. And so I have a question for you as far as it pertains to that, because what do you focus on as far as when you're talking about spending time with people who are in the same direction that you're trying to get to?
So for example, they say I'm in politics, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm over here like, I'm not a politician, guys. I don't know how to speak that language yet. Mm-hmm. And so you even hear from my social circle, he's not tainted yet. He's like still pure. And some people say, I do have a pure heart, and how could I even think about getting into something like that?
Right.
Because I want to give a different perspective that if you get into politics, you can still maintain a disposition of purity. You don't have to fall to the wayside like some of the guys are doing. So what I do is I put myself around these other politicians that are already at places where I want to be. Like, for example, I want to be, we're putting this out there right now. I want to go for the governor of California.
Oh, nice.
And so there's a couple of things I have to do. I have to become a supervisor, county supervisor, or assembly person, and then state senate. And then after some years in the Senate, then I can move towards that office.
Okay.
But I couldn't go from like local council person to, I mean, I could, but I got to be able to generate $250 million. I can't do that
wow.
yet. So Plus, I don't think it would be good for the state of California for me to move into that position this quick without having that experience to help me make rational decisions that are best for the people of California.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of
So
course.
I'm setting myself and having meetings with other people, politicians like Assemblymember Dr. Corey Jackson, spend some time with him. State Senator Rosalía Ochoa Bogue, spend some time with her.
Yeah.
And then any higher up office that I can spend time, you got Dr. Raul Ruiz.
Okay, yeah.
All of those guys, anytime I get a chance to say something to them, I pick their brain. And then they just let me know what's happening. And then that makes sure that I'm growing.
Right.
I'm in otherwise if I'm just hanging out with my friends, they're not politicians.
Yeah.
So they're not going to help me grow to that area that I need to be at. And the same thing with me being a therapist. I need to be around psychologists and psychiatrists and neurologists, these people who are already where they're at, they're solidified in their practice, because that's where I want to be at later on. You know what I mean? And so I put myself around those people, picking their brain all the time. That's why I know so much. It's like you would think I've been through doctorate school, but I know so much because I hang around the neurologists and the psychologists and those people way up there.
Right.
Even medical doctors.
Really? Huh, that's interesting. So how do you find a balance? Are you a dad? Mm-hmm. Okay.
4 children.
4 kids. How old are your kids?
16, 13, 3 and 1.
No way.
The 1-year-old, she turned January 20th, and then my he's not 3 yet, but he'll be on the 20th. He'll be 3.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's
Yeah.
so funny. Okay, so I assume you have to balance quite a bit between your family, political side, therapist. I mean,
So I
how do
try
you
to
manage?
cut weekends off
Okay.
for them, and then here I am.
Hey,
So-
thank
so
you for
every-
being here. We appreciate it.
So and then I try to involve them.
Yeah.
So and I know that's not being in the moment either if I bring them with me, but I did get a sense from my children that if I brought them with me, they felt like I wanted them there.
Yeah.
16-year-old said to me, it's like you don't want us around, because I didn't take them, right?
Yeah.
I took the little 2-year-old just so he learns how to sit still in important environments and stuff like that. And just, studying child development stuff, you do that.
Yeah.
But I told my 6-year-old, I was like, I didn't think you wanted to go because you're all teenager-ish now and you want
Yeah.
to play video games all the time. And so I started bringing him around more to all the little outings and, and I see why, Dad, you didn't bring us here. And I'm like, yeah, stuff is like 3 hours sometimes and you got to sit through all these accolades and stuff. And I know it's boring. That's why I didn't bring you guys.
Right.
I was looking out for you.
That's so funny. So does she? It's a daughter, you're right? Your 16-year-old.
Boy.
Oh, boy. Sorry. So does he understand things a little bit better or differently because of your involvement within the community and within politics and stuff like that?
Yes, and then there's that part where they get self-centered.
Really?
Oh, my dad's the mayor. Or, you know what I mean? Even their friends are like, oh, we could do this and this and that because all we got to do is ask Malcolm third, and he'll ask his dad, and then his dad will make it happen. So there's that. They get a
That's
kick
so
out of
funny.
that stuff. And
Really?
then they're like, because I did tell them if I do become the governor of California, I will run for president. And then they started going into, yeah, we're going to have bodyguards at our
They're
schools.
excited about that? Wow, that's amazing. Hey, look, at least your family is completely in support of it.
Oh, man.
That
And
is
I told
awesome.
everybody, like even you, everybody that I know, if I get to that White House, I'm inviting everybody I've ever met. You know what I mean?
I would love to be there. That would be absolutely amazing. Well, that's
Yeah.
awesome. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and go on another quick break, and we'll be right back.
Openings for 1 hour talk shows. If you want to host a radio show, now is the time. Make KCAA your flagship station. Our rates are affordable and our services are second to none. We broadcast to a population of 5 million people. Plus, we stream and podcast on all major online audio and video systems. If you've been thinking about broadcasting a weekly radio program on real radio plus the internet, contact our CEO at 281-599-9800. 281-599-9800. You can Skype your show from your home to our Redlands, California studio where our live producers and engineers are ready to work with you personally. A radio program on KCAA is the perfect work from home avocation in these stressful times. Just type kcaaradio.com into your browser to learn more about hosting a show on the best station in the nation, or call our CEO for details, 281-599-9800.
Welcome back to the Journey to Business and Entrepreneurship. My name is Brianna, and we're here with Malcolm. So we're going to be wrapping up in just a little bit. But Malcolm, since this entire show has been talk about mindfulness, and I have appreciated it so much, so I appreciate you being on here. But what is it that, how can we, or the average person, especially entrepreneurs, practice mindfulness? What do we have to do?
So sometimes it's difficult because sometimes people's minds are running 24/7 that they can't. Some people say it's like their mind is always jumping from thought to thought,
right,
and they don't know how to settle it down. So it's hard for them to even get into a meditative exercise for them to be mindful. So the first thing you have to do is practice gratitude. So as soon as you wake up, don't do anything. You turn your alarm off, sit up in your bed, take 60 seconds, think about what you're grateful for. That's it. The next 60 seconds, you want to then feel what it would feel like when you're thinking about the gratefulness. So there's going to be a feeling that comes up when you start to think about gratitude. I want you to hold on to that feeling all day. So that means as soon as you sense it go away, you got to bring yourself back to that original thought of what you're grateful for. And then that practice all day, that's the beginning of you being mindful.
Yeah. That's very intentional. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try that because, I mean, after speaking with you today, I'm just like, well, shoot, how can I be more mindful? Like, what do I need to do?
And then once you get that down, then you want to start to think about what you're thinking about. So anytime you have a thought go across your awareness, try not to judge the thought as bad or whatever. Just see it like you're watching a movie. And then ask yourself, is there any core beliefs, values, or ethics that are part of my position about nobody loves me? And is there anything related to my background or childhood history related to nobody loves me, or, someone saying something to you and then all of a sudden you start to feel angry? A thought went across your awareness. It's not them. We'll blame it on them. We'll blame it on the situation, the kids, the job. There's too much going on. We're overwhelmed. You got to bring yourself in the moment and just breathe. If someone's saying something to you and you feel yourself, this rise coming out of you, just breathe. That's it.
I like that.
Practice that. We're used to getting tense, and we want to. So
Defensive.
we build habits of that. So build the habit of going into your mind, using your imagination to think of the best case scenario. Go into your mind, use your imagination to gratitude, right? You're thinking what you're grateful for. I'm thankful that my kids are healthy. I'm thinking that so I hate the job, right? Not me. But at least I have one, so I'm grateful that I have a job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's
And then
true.
I'm grateful that I have a car, but I wish I had a nicer car, but I still have a car.
Perspective, yeah.
I have all of my limbs. There are people out here. I saw a guy changing a tire with his feet.
No way. It's actually quite impressive when you see people like that. Like, I know this one gentleman, he was born without legs and arms, and this man can do everything. I can't swim. And I saw him swimming, and they're like, you have no excuse. Like, you have no excuse not knowing how to swim. This man has no arms, no legs, and he can swim.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you practice gratitude for maybe a week or two, and then you start thinking about what you're thinking about for a week or two, and you get yourself used to that, right? You could do it for a month because they say about, a habit for about a month. People argue about that, but 30 days to build a habit, right? then you take the next 30 days and think about what you're thinking about, just to become aware of the 60 to 70,000 thoughts that are going across your awareness each day. And then you start to reframe those thoughts, because first of all, if you have a negative thought go across your mind, it's going to put you in a primal disposition within your body. Anything that puts you in primal, like animalistic, is a lie, complete lie.
Interesting. Now, one last question before we end for today. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Is being able to take people, gather them together, teach them how to break the habit of being themselves, and then just to get back to being human. We've gone away from being human. So I want to bring people back to being human so that they can be free in their own selves.
Yeah. I have so appreciated having you on today. Honestly, like I truly have. Like you have opened up my eyes to think about things that I haven't thought about. So I'm definitely going to be practicing that. But for those who are interested in learning more about you, following you or whatever, where can they find you?
On Instagram, Mindfulness by Malcolm. And then on there, you should see a link. I have some things on Etsy that people can download, that even you yourself could download, that will teach you how to do there's even a 30-day challenge for mindfulness.
No way. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. That's fantastic. And we can find that from your Instagram? Okay, cool.
There'll be a link to it.
Okay, cool. Well, guys, check out Malcolm. I mean, goodness, it's been fantastic having you on, and I appreciate you. And if anyone is also interested in the I3 Social Club, which is a local...
Southern California's Mind Spring. The legends you love and the best talk.
KCAA Loma Linda. KCAA Loma Linda. KCAA Loma Linda.
Open for takeout and delivery, El Tapiac Mexican food restaurant in the Tri-City Center of Redlands is back. Their entire family is on hand to serve up their delicious burritos, machaca, chorizo, huevos rancheros, steak and eggs, just part of their mouth-watering great food. Since 1531, people have marveled at the miracle of El Tapiac, and now you can marvel at the great food the Lugo family has been serving up for over 2 decades, nestled quietly in the corner of the Tri-City Center shopping mall next to Burlington Coat Factory. Support them. They can't wait to serve you some of their delectable, authentic, south-of-the-border Mexican fare at great prices, served up with love. Support the area's best-loved Mexican food restaurant in these tough times. Order up a tasty meal on the phone for delivery or takeout for breakfast, lunch, or dinner from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Call 909-307-0017. That's 909-307-0017. Or Google El Tapiac Redlands and treat yourself.
Tehibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau de Arco Super Tea helps build red corpuscles in the blood which carry oxygen to our organs and cells. Our organs and cells need oxygen to regenerate themselves. The immune system needs oxygen to develop, and cancer dies in oxygen. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit TehiboTeaClub.com. Tehibo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy, O, then continue with the word tea and then the word club. The complete website is TehiboTeaClub.com, or call us at 818-610-8088, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-610-8088, Tehibo Tea Club.
Bitcoin. Most of us have heard of it by now, but do you really understand what it is? What about money? Where does it come from and what gives it value? Money is changing, and today it's just like the early 1990s. The internet is here, but very few people understand what is about to happen. Don't get left behind this time. Tune into Cryptocurrency with Matthew J. Moore and listen to America's Bitcoin-focused radio show every Monday at 7 a.m. right here on 106.5 FM or 1050 a.m. KCAA.
NBC News Radio, I'm Chris Coraggio. President Biden is ordering the Defense Department to limit the distribution and access to sensitive information after a recent leak of classified documents. Speaking after his trip to Ireland, Biden said